Welcome back to another episode of The Missing Link in Your Healing. This is the podcast where we shine a light on the pieces of the healing puzzle that you may not know, or if you do know them, you might want to view this knowledge from a different perspective. We are all about bringing you a holistic perspective so that you can help yourself heal and become your own healer from the inside out. And with that, I'm going to introduce a really amazing guest with me today, Marcia Tunmer. Marcia is an intuitive spiritual life coach and guide. She helps people to reconnect to their intuition and to their divine wisdom. And as all you listeners know, that's what Loretta and I are about, because that's the place where our healing lies. Marcia does this so that people can transition through their life challenges in a way that is aligned to their true selves, and that's true to them and to their highest version of themselves. I've personally used Marcia on a few occasions, and she's exceptionally powerful. Plus, she is known and she brings, I know from my experience, warmth with her wisdom, and she creates a very safe, empowering space in which you can connect to yourself, to your intuition, to your healing, to your own growth, and to know how to continue doing this for the rest of your life. Because this healing is a lifelong journey. So, welcome, Marcia. What you have to bring about food, we are going to talk about food, and we are not going to talk about what we need to eat to be healthy or what hours of the day we should eat. We are going to talk about food from a completely different perspective, and mostly just our relationship with food. So, Marcia, I'm going to hand over to you now to just take this wherever you want it to go, because you're a deeply intuitive, powerful healer. So tell us a bit of your story if it feels right, and then just take this in whatever direction feels right for you. And whoever's listening, hang in here, because this is stuff you may not ever have heard before.
Thank you, Antoinette. I think my food journeys surprised me as well. I don't think I could have foreseen that food was going to be a place through which my relationship with food was going to be a place in which I found myself. And what I've come to realize is our relationship with food, whether we are compulsive eating or we are eating just when we're bored, or if we're binging, if we're bulimic, if we're emotional eaters, our relationship with food is the arena in which we're really playing out the relationship with ourselves. And it took me quite a long time to come to that understanding. But when I realized that food was the symptom, and food was not only the symptom, but it was the message and the call that was asking me to come back to myself.
Marcia, could you tell us then a little bit more about your relationship to food and your food journey, and how that brought you back to yourself?
So really where I think I had a slightly misaligned relationship with food, at certain times in my life. But food had not really been a huge issue. I mean, there were times where it was linked to weight and you want to eat a bit less to lose some weight. But it had never really played a huge role in my life until I found myself in a long-term relationship. And things started to get really tough and sticky in our relationship. And I was with a man who triggered a lot of what I thought maybe were just food wounds, but I realized were a lot more. And I found myself being in a place where I was bulimic and binge eating almost on a daily basis. That my every single waking thought was about food. And I think anybody who has had that degree of a relationship with food knows that your waking thought to your dream thoughts are about your conflict with food, about resisting food, about doing everything possible to micromanage, to control, to resist, especially anything in your life that goes around food. And I mean, it's from micromanagement to counting points and calories to avoiding social situations, to trying to anticipate what might trip you up in the day. But most of all, this huge thing that you spend all your inner energy trying to resist the urge and trying to resist food itself. And I got into an absolutely compulsive pattern where I would binge and then throw it all up. And what I realized through this pattern almost of self-hatred was start to realize it's not the relationship that I'm currently in that is making me do this. It's not this man that I'm with that is so terrible that he's that I'm in this position where I've lost control and I'm the victim and I have no self-worth. It was something bringing me back at the back of my mind that kept saying, Marcia, this is about you not being in alignment with your true self. This is about you having squashed down all your intuitive wisdom, letting go of your divine nature, releasing any form of connection to something more than your physical circumstances and your ego self, and really just absolutely losing that inner voice, that inner knowing that not only knew who I was, but that was trying so hard to call me back to self. So how this was playing out in the relationship is on a practical level, there was food trauma going on. I was with this man who was very, very dominant. And he would sort of, as soon as we went out to a restaurant, I ordered my food. Remember, things are already tricky for me around food. So maybe I've saved up points or I've starved myself just so that I can have this plate of food. And already it's got me triggered on a whole nother level. And what he always would do, as my food landed on the table, he would sort of reach over and stick his fork in and take the first bite. And this triggered me immensely because he was taking something that was mine. And at the same time, he was absolutely, what I realize now, he was activating this my sense that I had no safety, my sense and belief in scarcity in my life. And so, yeah, this used to play out in practical situations. Like at some stage, I was running a marathon, and at that time, then I was very strict around food as well, and I was only eating protein. And so, before the morning of the marathon, that morning, I opened a little bag of nuts, and it was my fuel for the entire marathon. And he sort of reached over and said, "Oh, can I have some of that?" And had half the packet of nuts. And so in me, it was the response that this was activating, but me not opening my mouth about it, not being able to say anything about how it made me feel, not really understanding my own inner reaction to this. And if I roll back the camera and I can look back at those times and those memories, I dig a little bit more and see what else was there. And what I realized was this intense amount of fear that I had at that stage in my life. Because on entering this relationship, right at the start, I mean, so before we even properly, moved in together, did any of that, this man had told me flat out, straight out, if you get fat, you can F off. And you either fit in or you F off. And so straight away, right at the start, I knew if I wasn't conforming, if I wasn't going to play by that script, I was out. And of course, this is in no ways to say that in any form I am blaming this man for what happened. I can actually say to you that I have the greatest amount of love and thankfulness to this man, because his role really was to show me how far from myself I had come. So before, what I realized was I was out of alignment with myself, with my inner wisdom, with my soul self, before I even entered that relationship, or at very least, as I was on the boundary of that relationship. I was getting intuitive flags that said, this isn't for you. I was getting lots of sensations that I knew intuitively were a big body no. I knew that this is not what I wanted to go. There was even a part of me is like, no, you're settling. But I didn't realize how the state of my self-worth at that time. And so with the help almost of a very dominant male and my slight feeling on my lack of worth, so easily I let go and I let in to a relationship and lost alignment with myself. And again, just coming back to the point that this is not about the man, somebody, even myself at a stage, I labeled that relationship as an abusive relationship or as a toxic relationship, or this man was abusive. But I realized that I can't even do that. It would be incorrect for me to label it like that, because it wasn't a toxic relationship. It was this relationship that became the arena with food for me to garner my self-confidence and self-worth, to find myself again, to come into alignment with what I intuitively knew. And so just on the side of that, to say that, I deeply believe that people come into our lives for a reason, that we've contracted, had soul contracts with the people that we're going to meet, karmic relationships. And when I look back years later, I said, what was the function of this man's life, this man in my life? And I knew intuitively at that stage, he came to teach me self-love. And I think this is just one example how we can explain that, is that, say we decided, okay, we're going to go to Earth and I'm going to teach you self-love. How it plays out on the earthly field, if you've almost offered and promised to help somebody like this, how it plays on the earthly field can go in very different directions. Because what I realized is, as I stepped into that relationship, as I first met him, he already offered that resistance for me. I already felt the no against him. I already felt that this wasn't for me. And I didn't follow those cues and signs and signals myself. Had I done that and followed my intuition, I would have learned self-love there and then. And he would have accomplished what he needed to do, what he was honoring me with. But I didn't. I entered into this relationship where it's like, okay, how else do we find this for you, Marcia? Okay, we're going to do it in this arena then, and perhaps I need to be like this to help you find you. So that's why I say, and in the work that I do, everything is about not the other person, and it's not about the food. It's about our inner relationship with ourselves. It's our divine connection and wisdom within. And so there's this weaving between food and people and any other relationship dynamic that we can have that truly just asks us, come back to yourself, come back to who you are. Who are you? And what is aligned and what feels right here?
Yeah, I love that word
Yes.
arena, Marcia. Thank you. Just a reflection from my side is I love the way you say what you say. So we all get into some kind of arena before we have that realization that we're out of alignment with who we really are. I mean, it's not our fault. We don't deliberately make bad choices or get sick. For me, it's played out in physical health and relationships. The arena is different, but usually it's some squeezing, am I right, or discomfort that either really squishes us but doesn't become beautiful wine, like Rumi would say, but just annihilates us in some way, or it becomes the discomfort that opens the way for this transformation. So with that, would you be willing to share with us how you did, what were the things that you actually did? How did that journey go when did you get the insight and what did you do about it? What steps did you take? What can you share with us for people that might need to go on the same journey?
Well, what I realized when I was very deeply in that bulimic phase was that I was squashing down my emotions. I was squashing down myself. And what came to me is not only why am I out of alignment, but what am I squashing down? What is so big and so fearful that I can't manage it any other way but using food as a coping strategy, using it as a tool. In fact, food then, when you, even if it's just emotional eating, food becomes the safe comfort zone. It almost becomes the release. It's almost like when you finally actually give in and you just eat something, or you just sit down on the couch and you binge out on a whole packet of chips, and you finish the whole thing and you can't stop eating. I don't know if you've noticed, maybe look back and notice in that eating, there actually is a relief. It's almost like the eating is the last link in the chain, in the energetic chain, that provides some sort of outlet, some sort of safety or comfort, some settling of the nervous system before the whole process then starts again. And it can start quite quickly again with the inner critic going, and I have no control, I have no willpower. You can go straight back into the next cycle. But what I noticed is giving into the urge. Just doing it, mindlessly, just opening the cupboard and then just eating something, that gave relief. And so I had to think, okay, so if that is the safe place, what came before that? Like, what am I resisting before that? What am I not wanting to see or look at in my life? And at that stage, it was very big decisions. This was I'm in this house with this man. Like, if I start, first of all, it's very threatening even just to have a conversation about this. In fact, at one stage, I got brave enough. I thought, okay, you can really do this, Marcia. I worked brave enough. I just thought, perhaps I'm not sharing what's going on in my life, and I need to share with this man. And I opened up my heart and I said, I'm I'm binging. I'm vomiting. I please help. I'm in a state. And he turned around as if like as a wounded dog, as in absolute fear for himself, because in that moment I could literally see it flash before his eyes. He was going to be stuck with a girlfriend who was fat, who didn't fit into that picture of himself. And he reacted straight from fear. Again, I understand that. But his came from this fear, and he just said, you should sort your own whatever out. This has got nothing to do with me. You sort it out. And so really, even just having a conversation with somebody as a micro step to trying to align your life, that was threatening enough for me. So I knew to get out of this relationship, I'd have to have some difficult conversations. I would have to possibly give up where I'm living, find another place to live. I'd have to go through the grief. I think sometimes that's what has been my biggest fear in leaving a relationship, is like, I don't want to mourn this relationship. And I certainly have a huge fear of what's after this relationship. The type of, am I lovable? Will anybody ever love me again? What's going to happen? Am I going to be a spinster until, I die? So it was almost like it's actually safer for me to stay in this relationship than to leave it. Like there's more fear about what is outside of this container, this arena, than there is with what's happening, because it's the devil that I know. It's something I can cope with. But the inner voice then is always just saying, Marcia, no, there's something more. This is settling. This is I was just kept being called back to just a full body knowing that I didn't know what to do, but it couldn't keep on like this. And I would have to get in touch with who I was and what I really wanted, however scary that was. Mhm.
Sorry, I was muted. And Marcia, how did you go about doing that? So I assume you probably left the relationship, but how did you start getting in touch with who you really were and what you really wanted? Because once we get that insight, there's still some practical stuff that we need to do. And I'd say you really quite in alignment now, but I've only just met you recently, so I'd love to hear a bit more about that journey if you're willing to share.
I think step by step, it was about starting a journey. And, I think any healing journey that we start, I think the key is to start it with compassion for self, not with criticism and self-judgment. I had to see this is where I am. And I, in a way, had to take ownership for where I had landed up. This wasn't his eating disorder. He was so right, it was mine. And I had to step by step start tuning in to myself and taking even just a micro step every day to coming back into alignment with myself. And at that stage, I started. I signed up for a course with a coach. That was 6 weeks, and I started running. I started using running as a way to move my body, but more importantly, to get out of the house, to get out of the environment that I was in, and gain a fresh perspective. And start when I was out alone, whether you're running or walking. When I was out of my environment, I was able to connect with myself at a different level. And I started listening to books while I ran and opening up this learning and opening up to myself, okay, well, what are relationships? And then going into slightly more, spiritual books, but just opening up to things that, when we get stuck in something, we actually have also got stuck in not learning in a way. Mm-hmm. And I think on many levels, I mean, like I think I've spoken to you before, it's healing itself is learned. Okay, we
Mhm.
we so easily taught in society to how to control things, how to gain things, what you have to do to gain things. We're never taught how to let go. How do I let go of something that I
Ah,
carry? We
yeah.
pick up baggage very easily, but nobody's taught us how do we put that down? How do we cope with a traumatic situation? And a lot of us
Mhm.
think, well, you can only get over your trauma and you can only sort this out if you go to that person, you go to X and you have to go see this person. And I'm not underestimating that at all. There's times when we absolutely need certain professionals' help or a certain dynamic, a different, different feedback from somebody is going to be so helpful. But I also realized we can learn the stuff. We can find ways to start to be able to heal ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, sorry, coming back, there were just I remember certain steps that I took to get out of that space. I started running. I started getting out of my environment. I started listening to books and podcasts. Even starting with the gritty ones where I was, how to stop eating, how to get out of a relationship if it wasn't serving you or whatever the dynamics were. I started where I was, and that just opened up my field. And I started to pick up ways that I could heal. And I did it in micro steps. I took one course at a time, one class at a time, determined to come back that I felt I was aligned with what I was doing. And so that also meant I had to make some big, scary choices. I always say,
Mhm.
healing, it doesn't have to be difficult, by the way. The other thing that I say is, people speak of inner work. And yes, it's inner work. But I've come to understand that inner work has been my greatest joy work as well, as
Mhm.
I've grown and developed and come in touch with myself. But yeah, to pick up these um, tools to to come back into alignment. So sorry, I've lost my track. You're going to have to put me
No,
back.
no, it's fine. I'll put you back, or maybe I'll take you further off. You say it doesn't have to be difficult, but it does require, and you've also said this is the
Oh yes,
paradox of healing, is sitting in the discomfort, so, and doing hard
absolutely.
things. But I think what you're
Yes,
saying is that on the other side of that, is incredible self-growth, and yeah. So
yeah,
to be in the discomfort and to make hard
yes,
choices and know we've got choices and to start doing the steps, because stuck is a very unconscious place often. So we go around and
mm,
around and around in the same pond. And
mm,
often we can't see the choices that are so obvious to us. And that's where a very big discomfort and addiction, a really abusive relationship, cancer, those kind of things, we very glibly say, oh, they're gifts and there's great healing in them. And there's a caution in saying that, because they're also very difficult, but those can be the very things that break us open to the truth. So one thing you said, I just got some notes from you in preparation for this, is knowledge is a very good starting point. Okay. So that's why we do this podcast. And that was a major part of my healing journey as well. You started listening to books, gathering information, doing courses. And I'm sure you got some professional help along the way. Did you?
yeah. Well,
Did
I
you have
mean, I started at that stage. The coach that I signed up with, 5 years later, she's my mentor. She,
Oh,
um,
wow.
and I think that was part of the something I would suggest to somebody is to get really consistent if they can, to really like
Mhm.
show up for yourself. Because, you know, look, you also need to find the right person, and perhaps you find different modalities and different things work at a certain stage. They're going to help you clear things. But I think the most important thing that I've carried is what we said at the beginning, it's lifelong. We so much want to just like go to a healer, get a reading, and somebody's going to heal it and clear it. And in a slight sense, we want them to help us, but we also want it to just be gone. And that's, another thing. It's not about perfection. You're never going to be fully healed. There's going to be other layers, other triggers, other emotions that have been stored in you that are going to come up, other fears. And you want to be able to have the tools and the insight to be able to deal with them. And maybe one of those is, listen, whenever I start feeling I'm getting stuck, I call my mentor. At a stage when I was deep, when it was really this bad with the bulimia and I was very stuck in that relationship, I used to sometimes have 3 sessions a week with her. It was really so bad. I mean, she was just a saint. And I was so deep in my victim self at that moment. I don't know how she coped with me, but she just was there. She held a space and she gave me tools and she gave me somebody else's perspective. And, now I've come to a stage 5 years later where I've learned so much from her. I use even some of her techniques in my own coaching. But when I'm feeling stuck, I go to her. I call up and say, this is where I'm stuck. This is what's happening in my life at the moment. Let's have a session, please. So I think that's one thing is constantly showing up for yourself. And the other thing that you reminded me of was, yes, it's about taking the risk to sit in the discomfort, taking the risk to be vulnerable, because sometimes the big decisions are really big. It's to have that decision where you're breaking up with somebody, where you're moving out, where half of you wants to stay because you love somebody so much and you still believe in them so much and you still want this for yourself so much, but you really have to acknowledge that it can't happen. There's just no ways. And to take that leap of faith for yourself, where you really are stepping into the unknown. You're stepping into what's not safe. You find yourself where you really have to decide is it's safe to stay in my unsafe environment. It was safe for me to be so unsafe with my eating and fearing I was going to get chucked out at any time and belittled for what I was, and to stay in a relationship where I couldn't grow. So the place of unsafety was my safe spot. And so it's also
Marcia, I have to interject here. Sorry to interrupt you, but you said something to me once when we were having a cup of tea, and it has stuck with me and I use it every day, is ask yourself, is this actually the safe? Is this action I'm going to take next, whether it's replying to someone that I shouldn't reply to, or eating that rusk, or staying in the relationship, is this actually the safe option? Because a couple of episodes ago, Loretta and I did something on limbic friction and the limbic system in our brains. And our brains are wired because of thousands and thousands of years of having to dodge danger to stay safe. But as you've alluded to, we often do that in the wrong way because of socialization, conditioning, or some trauma stuck in our brain that says, I absolutely cannot leave a relationship because I'm going to be financially destitute. I'll never be loved. I'm never going to be with anyone again. There's some really hard choices we have to make. And I love that little tool of yours that says, is this really the safe thing to do next for me? Yeah. And I always say, is this a part of my programming or my brain telling me, yes, Antoinette, like food is a go-to safe space for me. And I've never been bulimic or anorexic, but I've had this weird dance with food. Food absolutism, can only eat this or that, or binging, but on, in a way that never made me fat, and then pendulum swinging. And so I've really had to look at distracting myself with food, just looking at that relationship with food, which is misaligned, even though it's not my main coping mechanism, and asking myself, why? And that's what I love. So maybe you could talk more to this, because we also discussed this, is I asked myself, why am I reaching for food over and over when I'm not hungry? Or why am I eating 3 rusks instead of none? Am I really hungry? Does it really even taste good? And so it's about, could you take us through some of the things you did with yourself or you do with yourself around food? Because I think everybody has some kind of misaligned relationship with food, whether they're very bulimic or
Mm.
anorexic or fat, or whether they just very healthy but pendulum swing. I mean, there's so many different ways that food plays a role. And the one really profound thing you said, sorry, I'm not paraphrasing you, but you made me so excited. You said, food is the one thing we can't give up. So if we have an alcohol addiction or drug addiction, we can stop it, but we can't stop eating. So what did you, I found that I reach for food for safety, but actually what it is I'm just not safe within myself. That was a realization I came to. I haven't created my own inner safety. So somehow food feels safe for me. And it's not actually always safe. Sometimes it is, but it's so, yes, maybe talk us through a few more, I don't know what word to use. They don't have to be called tools, but ways that you deal with food. Even to this day, I'm sure your relationship with food needs presence and
Yeah, and absolutely, because like you said, food is in our arena 24/7 for the rest of our lives. We need food and we need water. We can exclude anything else, but that's why food is such a clear example and a message and a symptom of where we are inwardly, because it's not going to go away. We can't, not buy the cigarettes and not have the alcohol. It's with us, and so there's been many tools that I've picked up along the way. But what I really want to say is it's getting to know yourself. I think first of all, we're so constricted with what I call rule books. And not only the rule book about food, that contains everything that we've ever heard about food, about when to fast, how many hours to fast, which foods not to eat together, which you must eat together. Protein makes you fat, fats make you fat, whatever it is, well, carbs, poor proteins. Let's not give them the rep of making us fat. But whatever rules that we've had, like you only eat after a certain time, all of those are, I want you to see them just as a rule book that you've created in your mind from everything that you've heard from authorities, from your parents, from society, from a YouTube clip. But which of those are right for you? Like, discern your truth for you. Are you just following and thinking that's going to help you because somebody else said so? So I'm very on that side when it comes to food rules. I look very carefully, well, is this true? And is it true for me? Because maybe it is true for me. Maybe there's certain foods that feed my energy more. Maybe there's more foods that make me feel alive, and foods that make me feel dead because they're just too heavy or dense, or they actually even block my intuitive connection. So first of all, it's like recognizing you have a food rule book. And every time you do, oh, I can't do this because of this, recognize, rule there. What do I do with that rule? And what do I want to do with that rule? Can I discern what it is for me? But more than the food rule book is every other rule book that we've created around our lives. And it's come from our parents, from religion. We've told what we have to do to be good, to be bad. We've been told what's right and wrong, what we need to do in a relationship to be worthy. And then we've added our own relationship trauma or whatever's going on with food or whatever it is. We said, these are the things I need to do to stay safe. If I don't talk to him as he walks in the door and I give him time to release work a bit, then that might be a safe place for me. We start building up rules about everything. Okay. And so it makes us become very critical about ourselves. First of all, it closes the door. It actually closes that book and says, this is, this is word. Instead of saying, hang on a second. There can be more than two truths here. It needn't be right or wrong. There can be a middle ground. It's really about starting to discern that for yourself, to spotting what sort of rules you're living by, and also questioning, well, where may I have picked that up? And that's where we can do some of the deep emotional work around this. A lot of it, when I work with clients, it's not just about healing, for instance, a certain idea or trauma that happened around food. It's starting to do what I say is, when we connect with us, if we're coming into alignment with ourselves, it means we come into alignment with our shadow and our light. And we own those shadows and we bring the light to it. Just as much we have to remember that we need to be owning our light. We need to be stepping into our light as well. That's what coming into alignment is. But to do that, I use the shadows. I use what's there, deep, stuck down, stored in memory and charge in your body. Use that to come and find the light. So it's this descending into that to ascend. But it doesn't have to be difficult and painful. Often I've just found it's absolute, like when you can do them, you can find the stuck and stored emotion and you can find what's really going on here. It's release. It's release. So yeah.
Carry on. I just want to ask a question when you finish. Sorry, I interrupted you. Oh, sorry. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no. So I'm just thinking, the different layers. So there's I think I was talking about, how I help clients then through this, is we're working around a lot of releasing rule books, releasing beliefs, releasing a very stern inner self and inner judgmental critic of ourselves. There's certain things we also have to understand. One of the tools that I use is that I simply can't buy a box of rusks and have them in a pretty jar on my kitchen counter because I'm going to eat all those rusks.
Oh, yeah, you too. Okay, good.
I know that that's a fault. And I'm not going to say, Marcia, if you're really over your eating disorder and you really have self-control and you had willpower, you should be able to. You're not healed, you're not evolved until you can have a jar of rusks and not eat them all in one sitting. And that's not where I come from. It's this acceptance. Okay, Marcia, you can be pretty well aligned and neutral when it comes to a lot of things. And you're really good at some things that you do. But having a jar of rusks on your kitchen table, it's just not something that I can do yet, or I want to put myself in a situation with. So I just don't buy the rusks. So, but I do that. You have to do that not in a father critical way. It has to do in this place of love. I see you. I know where you are right now, and it's okay. And maybe it gets better. Maybe one day I can do that. Maybe one day I can't. But it's not going to mean I dissolve my whole self-worth over that anymore.
Yes, that's powerful, because what we tend to do, especially when we get involved in a more conscious, health-related type world. I mean, I got cancer, as everyone knows, on an exceptionally healthy lifestyle, in inverted commas, all the organic, vegetarian, gluten-free. Because little did I know that my wounding was a huge trigger. And I don't mean my wounding as my past trauma and all that, but the suppressed emotions, the limiting beliefs I didn't know, the toxic mind state that was unknowingly running my show. That was a big trigger for my cancer. And the fascinating thing, I never knew it was in place, even though I'd be on a spiritual self-help path a long time. And it was only because of cancer broke open a place of discomfort where I had to go, well, how did I create this on some level? Because it doesn't just arrive. And therefore, how do I heal myself? And when I realized I was suppressing emotions and all that, I also started realizing something else fascinating about food. I was eating healthy, organic, exercising, all of that, but I had this extreme absolutism about food and quite a punishing approach to, like, I would do very long fasts. And please, I'm not saying fasting is not a good thing, but I do long, harsh water fasts, and I'd be really upset with myself if I ate X, Y, Z. So I'm bringing this full circle back to what you've just said, is the self-compassion and this knowing what's the truth for you also in the moment, Marcia, because it can change moment by moment and day by day for us. And I always see truth as two sides of a coin, and the actual real truth is on the rim of the coin. So if the coin's upright, it's subtle, this. Maybe today it's okay for me to have 2 rusks, even though gluten's not my best friend. But is it okay for me to eat a jar of rusks when there's one on my counter? Well, clearly not. But if I do that, if I do have rusks and I do eat them all, I used to just beat up on myself so badly. And now I've also realized that the healing often comes when we know we've done something. So as long as you're aware that you've done it, oh my goodness, I ate those rusks, I ate the whole packet. Oh, I used to go, you don't want to do that, you shouldn't be doing this. And that creates that whole punishing cycle, which creates almost absolutism and the stuff that goes around it. So it's like, well, okay, I ate all those rusks. And as you said, can I still love myself? It doesn't take away my self-worth. It doesn't take away my connection to God and God's self. So, yeah, you said something in our preparation. It's a beautiful sentence as well. Help me see that I can't see. And this is another one of those subtleties. Help me see what I can't see. So maybe what I can't see, Antoinette, is not what I'm seeing on, maybe the truth doesn't lie on YouTube or in some rigid vegan program for me. All of those things too. So I'm making many points in one. Those things too can become very rigid and very punishing. We might be eating the right food, as in it's healthy and we're not eating animals or fat or gluten, but that the truth of that matter, if we really look at our own truth in the moment, is that maybe that eating plan's not good for me, or it's not good for me right now. And whose truth have I bought into here just because it's the opposite side of where I was, like the allopathic medicine and the natural? It's that extremism was a very big thing I had to look at and heal, that absolutism. So yes, I love the fact that you say healing is learned, just like everything else is learned. And there's such strong stuff out there now about what we should eat, how we should eat, when we should eat, what's right for us. There is no one size fits all. Am I right? There's no, and it changes. For me, it changes all the time. So, yeah, I'll let you butt in now
And I
because you.
think what that is I think that what that is remember that all those rules, and you should eat this, and if you want to get healthy and you want to clear your cancer and you want to be thin and you want to get your set weight, and or you just, if you want to be in control around food, if you want to have more willpower, all of those are ideas and information that is based in fear. It's you reaching to that because if you don't do this, the panic arises in you. You're reaching for that solution out of fear. I want to sort of enable us all to reach for a solution out of love and from a place of alignment. Like, how does this feel for me? What does this truth discern for me? How can I use my own intuitive gifts and intuitive awareness to feel what might be right for me in the moment? And at the same time, should I make a mistake, um, to learn what I can from it, and to move on from that without labeling myself, criticizing myself. And so there's all sorts of ways that I do that. I mean, on one hand, with, especially people entering a spiritual arena and this whole spiritual awakening and collective consciousness, and we feel like we have all these loops to get through, and we must be at a certain level of awareness. So when we're not doing that, we can become very critical. In fact, we can actually fall into the shadow. We can fall into the darkness, and forget who we truly are. And at the same time, it's bringing awareness. If I listen to something on YouTube, and I listen to a lot of spiritual stuff, so like spiritual gurus or just people who are out there in the spotlight, and a lot of it, yes, makes sense. But I make sure that I always listen with curiosity, because what in this might not fit well for me. Even to a degree now where you're having to discern AI, who wrote this post and who's produced this post, versus a very subtle, intuitive awareness of what is real and what is artificial. Because there can be a lot of realness and truth in this, but it's just to remain open. You don't have to judge it, but like, what they're saying in this post, there's a lot I resonate with, but it doesn't mean just because this guy is a guru and on a stand that everything he says is true. I think we're so quick. We want the diet that works. We want the person that will tell us how we heal ourselves. But because it's such a personal journey, we need to be constantly, is this good for me? If I walk into a supermarket with food, you can literally walk down the aisles and just have a feel, get an energetic feel. It's like doing intuitive shopping. Like, feel for yourself what the vibration for you of, say, a boxed cereal is. A box of cornflakes or Rice Krispies. I'm sorry if there's anybody who loves that, but like, covered in the plastic, in thick plastic, and almost actually just being the texture of air, like vibrationally. Yes, if I want a high and I want to binge, I'm going to take cornflakes and sugar and milk and eat it by the spoonfuls. But if I want this to nourish my body and my energetic bodies, like, you can feel that cornflakes box is dead. You literally can feel it's not living anymore. There's no life in what I'm about to bring into myself. And again, as I say, I look at it both ways. If I'm going to binge and that happens and I do that, then that happens, and I just look backwards. I can see, why did I do that? Not, I'm never going to do it again, and I'm a failure, and if I ever reach for the cornflakes again. So, in fact, one of the other tools I'd like to suggest is, often, I do teach there's ways that we can move into a potential binge or potential emotional eating. Like, there's things that we can do before that. But what about when you actually find yourself, you actually are opening the cupboard, grabbing what you want, or you're in a full binge, just even from emotional eating on the couch with a full box of biscuits, or something more serious where you've gone to the supermarket, you've picked out all your foods that you crave, your binge foods. You're eating a whole packet of that, and you're timing in your head, how fast can I eat this? Because how hard is this going to be to vomit up? Like, you're preparing and you're arranging yourself for what needs to come next to give you the relief, because the first relief was actually the binging, and the second relief is going to be the purging. So what do you do when you're in that moment? Because by then the momentum is so strong and so charged, we're often not able to stop ourselves. And so the critical side of us comes in. It's like, I have to stop this. I'm such a failure. Look at my self-worth. I didn't have the willpower again. I'm going to get so fat. I'm unlovable. Nobody will ever love me. We just spiral there. And so one of the things that I do is I stop. And even if I have the food in my hand, I just stop, and I just center and put my hand on my heart, and you sort of just drop into yourself and you just say, what's wrong, Marcia? What's eating you?
Wow.
And isn't that so beautiful? Because we're eating it, but actually, what's eating me? What's eating me? And in that moment, I might be able to just reach for one thing. It's like, I'm anxious. I'm anxious. And you can go a little bit deeper. Okay, why are you anxious, Marcia? I'm anxious because X, Y, Z. And then you know what? Maybe that's not going to be enough to settle me and stop the binging. And I'm still going to eat the whole packet of biscuits. But in some ways, I'm going to eat knowing. And that's a choice I make. Do I carry on? And you'll usually find if you do this more and more and you get in touch with the emotion that is layered underneath the action, the response, the eating is just the response. If you get in touch with it enough, your binging or eating periods are going to come shorter, the amount you binge in that session, or the space between sessions is going to become longer, and eventually it might disappear altogether, except when the next message is coming up that's saying, hey, I'm here for attention, there's something you're not looking at in your life. So in those moments, like in the last moment that I had when I had to do that, I realized it was anxiety, and I realized what I was so anxious about, and I couldn't stop finishing. I think in this case it was raisins and sunflower seeds, but I couldn't stop finishing the whole bowl. But the next morning, because I'd gone through this process, I just sat quietly in bed in the morning in a meditative way, and I just said, let's go back there. Let's go back to that anxiety. And what were you feeling? And I just took myself through a gentle process where I went through under the layers of each emotion and found what was really triggering. And I think, there's lots of process that we can do, but how is I call it an oh moment, where it's like, oh, that's what was worrying me, Marcia.
Okay.
And when you can get there, that self-healing, just holding yourself with that compassion, allowing what's not being seen and felt to come when it's safe to come,
Wow. Oh, that's big.
Yeah. And then just starting again. You start your day. For me, you start every day. It's not like you start your day willing to start at the beginning again, willing to be everything I was yesterday, but willing to start this day afresh and to learn what I need to do, to do the things in my life that I need to do, and with a simple prayer, or however you want to start your day, is just like, where will you have me go? What will you have me do? What will you have me say? And to whom?
That's beautiful.
And then I hand over. If it's really been an issue with food, if it's been an issue with relationship, and I can't stop thinking about that person, or I've had a conflict with somebody, it's going round and round in my head and it's had me stuck, and it's actually the reason I was so anxious in eating, I simply say, I hand this over. I give this over to you, to God, to my divine source, to whoever it is. And I actually hand it over to such an extent that if ever it comes up in my thoughts that day, I just hand it back. I go into that space where, just like you would choose a run to get out of your environment, you're choosing to hand something over to a greater power so that you can get out of your environment. So something new can come in, some new insight can come in.
Yeah, I love that. In fact, yeah, I think I've used that quite a lot more than I even know. And it's not something we talk about, because sometimes also for me, Marcia, sometimes my The ego, the ego doesn't get integrated to divine self very easily because its role is to keep us safe and loved. And some of our egos, well, most of our ego, I think everybody's ego goes kicking and screaming, actually. So often when we get some truths and we start making changes, real changes, to be in alignment with who we really are, the ego can kick back very, very hard, and it's unconscious, even though it's conscious. So I've been finding myself unconsciously, consciously. It makes no sense. That's such a contradiction. Actually, just eating too many, I don't know why, rusks. I never even used to like rusks, but I'm like, and it's like I couldn't stop it. I knew I was doing it, so I didn't actually hand it over to a higher power. Sometimes I did feel through the feelings. I even knew why I was doing it, and I carried on doing it. And then I just had this insight this weekend, and I realized I've had it often for me. I don't know if it happens for you or other people, but sometimes the unconscious thing that I'm doing, the reactiveness, the coping mechanism, just has to be so in my face that I go, no, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I need help, So just seeing it and how it makes you feel, but not beating up on ourselves. So it's so multifaceted, this journey, actually. And it's so, it requires a lot of intuition, and that's what it all comes down to. That's what Loretta and I talk about all the time. But becoming deeply intuitive takes time and daily practice, and it takes reprogramming this unconscious and reuniting with who we really are. So it's not a quick fix, and we have to do the work. You said this process takes time, and we need to do the work, and that's the truth. But so I wanted to say one more thing, and maybe we could end with this, or you could end with something that feels right for you. You said something to me which, hello, Marcia's disappeared. Okay, I guess it's done. So I'm going to tell you what Marcia said, because she's disappeared, and then I'm going to end this off because it's been amazing. Be curious, which is already spoken to, and she said, most of us think seeing is believing, but actually we have to believe before we see. So Marcia is not here, so I can't say goodbye to her, but goodbye, Marcia. And Marcia is a profoundly powerful coach, healer, medical intuitive. If you want to reach out to her, I'm going to put all her contact details, her website, her email address, and everything in the show notes. So it's easy for you to access her work and what she does. And please, if you have any questions around food that you'd love to ask us, we'd be happy to answer them by email, Marcia or I. And please share this episode, because there are many people who are having some kind of misaligned dance or relationship with food, very extremely or maybe even unconsciously. So thank you for listening, and we're always grateful to have you here. And thank you again, Marcia.